which is one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just certified of the United States.
Could you hear that at all? Because if you couldn't, that doesn't bode well for the rest. Okay, good.
Oh, no, we heard it.
Okay.
So that was Jake Starman, just so you all know.
Thank you. Okay, next we have agenda changes.
I don't think we have it.
I didn't see any. Okay, thank you. Next, we're moving on to privilege of the floor, the public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the board at this time? Okay, going once, going twice. Next, we can move on to the cabinet reports and updates. Is Principal Conover going to go first, maybe?
Actually, I'm going to go for both of us, if that's okay.
Oh, okay.
So Andrea and I decided to do a joint presentation for this particular board meeting, as her building has gone remote and my building has gone remote. So we worked together with the help of Mike Gothier and a number of our very generous teachers, and put together a little video to show you what a remote day looks like. It actually was taken last Friday. What you're going to see is you're actually going to see from a student's perspective, and then you're going to see from the teacher's perspective, and then you're just going to see what the building looks like in general, both the high school and the elementary school, without any students in the building. So.
All right, here we go.
Story. And what we're going to try to do is find the theme, okay, of this story. And then we're going to use details from specific areas to back up our response. So again, you're going to be finding the theme from the whole story, just like we did yesterday, okay? And then backing up our response with details.
With a new day comes new strength and new thoughts. Let's have a wonderful day. So our agenda today, boys and girls, this is what we're going to do. We're going to once again talk about theme. That's our focus once again today.
Okay, so again, the assignment from yesterday, you can find that under week 19, Thursday 121, finding slope and y-intercept. I asked you guys not to submit it yesterday because it's not done yet. Okay, so if you did submit it and you didn't finish it, if you went ahead and did everything, then that's okay. But if not, then unsubmit it so you can finish it, and then you can resubmit it.
All right. Best explanation for Europe's ability to make breakthroughs in navigation technologies would be that what? Technology's good. Look at these guys knocking this out of the park.
Just scan it. Any way you do, you can use notes from your Apple phone. If you've got an Apple phone, that's the easiest. You can create a Google Doc. Once you take the picture, create a new doc and just upload them all to there. And so while you're doing that, you guys are hopping on Kahoot, and we'll start going over that. Test Monday. Over the weekend, remember, you have any questions, email me. We'll set up a time. We'll meet. We'll go over any answers that you want to go over. Okay?
And it was, I don't know, it was kind of all consuming for me. I think I took physics my senior year, took chemistry junior year, but it was like the thing I had to do. English classes were easy for me. Physics was a challenge, and so I just sat there with all dedication and tried to make myself do it.
Okay, so remember we're going to GimKit Live. So go to GimKit Live, and then how many do we have right now? 33. We have a couple teachers in, so we still have a few of you that need to get in. Okay. Who said that? Andrew? What's up?
Well, but I would like you guys to remember that we all need to be on mute. Can everybody put themselves on mute? And I want you to pin me. Can you pin me? Find my face and put your arrow over that square and make sure that you can pin me so that you can see this screen really big. All right, thumbs up if you did that.
Is this room wall too big?
Nope, that's perfect. 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 Okay. So what you're going to, so
If like
go ahead.
you can't find the right size.
Who's asking that? Sam. If the
Like what if
How many apples did she pass out? So what I want you to do, circle your numbers, right? Use your cube methods. Circle your numbers, underline the question, and box any words that lead you to tell you or lead you down the path of going, okay, I need to multiply, I need to subtract, okay, which we just discussed.
Wise. Wise. Two words that mean the same thing. Look at my chart, boys and girls. Look at your chart. Do you have your synonyms on the synonym side? Everybody check. Oh, I love how Izzy just gave me a thumbs up. She's showing me that she's checking. She's being that responsible second grader. Cooper, that looks fantastic. Smart and wise are synonyms.
guys, how did we get so low? Come on guys, answer those questions faster. Doing great.
Your assignment that is bugging out, and when I grade it, I'll see it, and don't worry about it.
Looking good, friends. All right, let's talk about our day today. All right, make sure you're on mute, guys. Ivan, can you make sure you're on mute, honey? All right. Okay. Thank you.
Is this room wall too big?
nope, that's perfect.
I want everybody to echo the word opposite. We're gonna watch your mouth. Say that word. Isabel, I could see you saying opposites. Josie, I was watching you and you were saying opposites. Let's practice an antonym or opposites. Over here, boys and girls, I'm going to give you the word day. Day. Now use your brain.
So we didn't put this together to let people see that it's sad. We just wanted to let people who haven't been in our building truly have the experience of what it's like to be a teacher and teaching to an empty room. We showed you the Joe Bennett Hall. We showed you the elementary cafeteria. We showed you the high school cafeteria, the hallways. So we really just thought that, you know, as a board, you guys might want to just see what the building is like. It's a very different feeling. It's very different for the teachers. So that is what Friday looked like when we went around and videoed, and we were both remote. So any questions?
Yes. Thank you for that. It was very informative, and like they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So it was, I don't know what I was imagining, but that looks even more complicated than I imagined. But everybody seemed to be very engaged.
My only comment too is that as a parent and as a board member, I've been super amazed by the amount of teamwork that's happening among the faculty as well. My kids aren't in a single meet where there isn't another faculty member present, where they're supporting each other and doing this together. So I think that's a kudos to the culture that you've built for all of the staff. Nice job.
I'm sure that they cannot wait till the day comes where the halls are completely full and there's a lot of noise and kids are running through the hallway. Again, I know after looking at that, I can't wait to look like that again. It just makes me sad that the kids aren't doing what they normally do when it's school time.
But I do have to say that, you know what, our teachers are supporting each other, and we really wanted to show you the difference between the high school and the elementary from the student perspective. And if you had noticed, in the elementary, they have lots of little people actually engaging with the teachers. If you looked at what the high school teachers see, they just see the little emojis that people have put out for their heads. So, and I am also someday hoping that our buildings are going to be even the silly things like the kids who used to ride the garbage cans down the hallway, which that always annoyed me, but I have not seen that this year. So, not to give anybody an idea to do that, but you know, the little things like that. I know both Andrea and I miss tremendously. So we wanted to share that with you so that you had a little different perspective of what it is when we do go remote.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay. Do we have a assistant superintendent report?
No, Jeff doesn't have a report. We're going to do the budget workshop.
Great. Okay, perfect. So then we can move on to the superintendent's report and update.
Yeah, I have a few things to update you about. One is my obligatory COVID-19 update slide. And so the first thing that I just wanted to talk about was our school closures. So we did end up having to close our junior, senior high school and our elementary school for at least some days last week. And so every time we do that, I just want everybody to know that a lot of planning goes into even deciding that we're going to close. So one of the things that folks might not know is that there is also a regional substitute shortage. I do get lots of emails after we close down suggesting that we use substitutes. I would gladly use substitutes, and I would invite anybody who would like to apply to become a substitute to do so, because we could certainly use a hand. But when we're closing down school, what that really means is that every available adult in the building is being used, and we still can't cover all places and get people what they need to survive, like lunch and an occasional break. And so those school closures are really when we don't have any available staff. So please know that we're doing everything that we can to try to minimize those. And actually, I think have saved by staff moving around and doing different things, have saved a lot of days that could have been closure days, just based on the staff pitching in. Also want to point out that We are now seeing some additional COVID-19 variants in the area. You've probably seen that in the news. Because of the new COVID-19 variants and the still high positivity rate, some of the quarantines are getting a little bit broader than they had been at the beginning. So when we first started quarantining students, we were doing so very surgically based on CDC guidelines. And now that there's this new, more contagious strain, things are happening a lot faster than they would have at the beginning, and more people are being quarantined than before just because of how rapidly it spreads. So they have to, I think the Department of Health feels like they have to act sooner to prevent big outbreaks from happening. So sometimes we've closed or we've had to quarantine folks because of not a positive in our school, but because of a presumed positive or even a close contact that we thought might turn into a positive. And so know that those aren't decisions that we're making. Those are decisions that we make with the Department of Health. And I think sometimes people might be confused about that because the call that you're getting on the phone is from a school nurse, most likely, who's telling you that your child is quarantined. So the nurses are actually doing that on behalf of the Department of Health. If you were to wait for the Department of Health to call you to tell you that you were quarantined, I guarantee that your quarantine would be just about up by the time you heard. What we can do is tell everybody that same day, even most of the time before the letter goes out, everybody's already been notified. And so, thankfully our nurses are right on the ball with that and are have become pretty expert at contact tracing themselves. So we did, also with the help of our nurses, begin surveillance testing. And we wanted to start with adults in the buildings to make sure that everything was working properly and we had a good workflow. It actually went very smoothly. We ended up testing 53 adults. Of those 53 tests, 100% of them were negative. And so we're going to continue to do some surveillance testing, about 20% of our population in a month, and then we'll rotate that around. And we'll do that until we're out of rapid tests. The rapid tests also have an expiration date on them. So if we don't use them, they expire, and we don't want that to happen when we can use them for something worthwhile. So what I hope folks are seeing is that our schools are safe places to be. We did have some dips after the holidays of people attending schools. And I know that sounds kind of, like the antithesis of what's going on. So we're closing schools, but yet I keep saying that our schools are safe places to be. So the reason why I say that is because we have not seen any examples of transmission happening in schools. So of the 17 positive cases that we've had in the district, which is still a pretty low number, of those 17 positive cases, we don't have any evidence that transmissions happened within schools. Those are all folks that are getting sick outside of school and then coming into school. And then because they're wearing masks and we're socially distancing and we're cleaning up regularly and disinfecting everything, we've managed to keep that transmission down to the point where it's non-existent as far as we can tell. And that's true in a lot of schools. Actually, I was talking to the Schoharie superintendents, and of all of us, there was one, I think there was 2 cases in one school that were presumed to be transmissions on a school bus. But other than that, everybody in all of Schoharie County hadn't seen transmission in schools. So another thing I wanted to bring up was a plan that we have for the elementary school. So it's particularly troubling whenever we have to close the elementary school for in-person learning. Not only do we have a smaller number of people doing remote learning in the elementary school, it's also much harder for those students to get online. They're less independent than the junior, senior high school kids at using computers. Also, when they're home, their parents are often missing work because they need to stay home with them. And so we know that it causes a lot of disruption to families, and it's not a good environment for kids to be in, for especially young kids to be in. And so what we're going to try to do for the next little while to see if it has some benefit is we're going to actually try to shift junior, senior high school staff down to the elementary school if the elementary school finds itself in a situation where they don't have enough staff. And then if that causes us to go remote in the high school, I think I'd prefer to go remote in the high school rather than go remote in the elementary school. Neither one is good, but if I have to pick the lesser of the two evils, I'd much rather go remote in the high school than in the elementary school. So that's what we're going to plan to do if it happens again, which we hope it doesn't. But if it happens again, we're going to give that a shot and see if it has some positive impact. I wanted to give you an update on athletics. I know that this was in the news, and probably Jody has gotten several thousand phone calls and people visiting her office about when sports are going to start. So I will say that the governor did announce that effective February 1st, that higher risk sports are allowed to take place, provided that local health authorities permit them. So basically, the governor gave up his decision-making power and sent it to the Department of Health, the local departments of health, to make that decision on his behalf based on what people are seeing in the communities. And so there's a lot of ifs. This is not a done deal by any means. I know that all the county Department of Health officials met recently and talked about where they were, and it was from what I understand, it was a real mixed bag of opinions about what should be done. There are some county departments of health that are saying definitely not. Why are we considering this? And then there are some departments of health that are willing to take the calculated risk of offering sports. We do know that when and if the local departments of health announce that we can have athletics, there might be some other kind of caveats in there. So it might be that they say that we're allowed to do athletics, but we can't do it if there is evidence of those more transmissible variants of COVID in the area. Or we can do it as long as we're below 4% positivity, or we can do it as long as we can prove that we have an ability to enforce compliance and our safety regulations. So they can say yes with all these different caveats too. So keep that in mind as well. I did meet with superintendents and athletic directors in the WAC today to talk about our plan for presenting, that we're going to present to the various county departments of health for approval. I will say that this plan that the WAC is presenting, it has these dates roughly for the seasons. So we have the winter season would start really, really soon, would be a February 1st start. And for us, I put that in winter, that football and soccer and volleyball, I switched the winter sports and the fall 2 sports. So the winter sports are basketball and wrestling. And then the fall 2 sports, which would be March 7th to May 1st, that's football, soccer, volleyball, and swimming. And then the regular spring sports would be April 28th to June 25th. And the longest season in spring would be baseball, because they actually didn't have any kind of season at all last year. So that's roughly what the calendar would look like. We don't have any timetable for when the Department of Health is going to announce whether they are approving this or not, even though the governor said that they can do so as soon as February 1st. They don't have to. So keep that in mind too. They could announce it at the end of February when there's about enough time to get in one game, and then we'd have to have another conversation about whether or not that's worth it. I can also tell you that the WAC plan will include a real minimized travel, much more regional play, kind of splitting the WAC into 2, an east and a west. And with us playing the Western teams, and especially for basketball, maybe playing a home and away game against the same district in a week so that we can minimize exposure to different school districts for contact tracing purposes, and minimizing that cross-district exposure. We do know that our plan includes masking for athletes, and we also know that our plan includes prohibiting spectators, except for senior parents on senior night. And then in that case, those senior parents would obviously be able to attend, but in a socially distanced way. And all of us have plans to stream live the events that we can, all the events that we can. We would stream ours on our YouTube live page and probably put it on our webpage too, so that everybody could watch from home. Not sure about the quality level of that. I do know that the Boosters Club was able to purchase a camera and a streaming device that allows us to do that. And I'm really excited about being able to use it. If it works out, it might be something that, we continue to do in years to come for people who can't make it out to games and still want to follow along. So that's the plan for athletics. So in closing, I would say there's a possibility that there are athletics. However, don't count your chickens before they're hatched. Wait for the Department of Health to announce. As soon as the Department of Health announces, we will then announce what we're going to do as a district. Okay. So I wanted to point this out too. This isn't included in our budget workshop tonight, but just a brief word on funds that have been withheld at the state level. So we've talked about this several times. So at the beginning of the year, the payments that we were getting from the state were minus 20% of what was expected. And so just want to point out that there was a quote in the paper this week in the Gazette that a representative from the Division of Budget said that no funds will be withheld from school districts, and that all previously withheld money will be refunded by March 31st. Schools have not gotten an official statement. This was something that appeared in a newspaper. I'm very excited about it. I know Jeff is very excited about it. We will tell you when the check is in hand. So I'll also say that just because it says that money that's withheld will be reimbursed, we still don't have an indication about what's going to happen with transportation reimbursements. So if you remember, we weren't reimbursed for the time that we were out of school. And so there's some indication in the governor's new budget that things like transportation that was used for delivering food might be reimbursed. However, there's still no sense that just keeping the transportation staff kind of held in place and ready to go will be reimbursed, even though that's something that we were asked to do. So that's still a disappointment, and I'm still waiting to see what happens there. But please remember this quote, that this is something that the spokesman from the Division of Budget said to a reporter. I confirmed that he said it, and we're going to wait, and we'll let you know when and if official word actually comes. Our email is actually published, and anytime the Division of Budget would like to just send statements through official channels, they're welcome to do that, but they have not done that in this particular case. And that's my report.
Thank you. Let's move on to our budget workshop.
Okay, do you see the new presentation?
It says budget workshop presentation. That's what we see.
This one that says fiscal status, you see, don't see it? Okay.
No. There, now we see.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so just an overview of our budget planning calendar. So tonight we're going to do an overview of our budget goals, and then we're going to break the budget into different parts. So on February 9th, our next workshop, we're going to talk about athletics and technology, extracurricular, and we'll start to talk about the tax cap. And then February 23rd, we'll do transportation operations and maintenance, and then we'll talk about debt service, and then we'll talk about instruction, and start talking about state aid by March 20th. Hopefully that picture is a little bit more clear than it is now. And then our timeline is that the board would then be on pace to adopt the budget April 13th. And then we have our other days, and for right now it's on track for a regularly scheduled May 18th annual budget vote. So Jeff and I have been working on the budget for quite a few weeks now, talking about what our priorities would be and our approach to putting together a budget. So a couple of weeks ago, I shared our strategic plan with you. These are also our budget priorities. So for me, the budget is a document that is part of the strategic plan. So it shows you how you're going to get this strategic plan done. What resources are you going to allocate to these things? So these are the things that we still think are the most important things for our district. And so when we're prioritizing things, these things come first. The other things that we're thinking about are really life after COVID-19. So this, the kind of condition that we're in right now, that we saw on the video that the principals presented, that is not going to be our everyday. And so we are planning to return to normal, and then even planning to return better than normal, and trying to enhance some of the things that we're doing. This has really taught us what's important about education. And what's important to us is that we're a really student-centered organization. And so there's some stuff that we're going to be doing when we return to try to make sure that we get rid of all the stuff that didn't really matter and we focus more on the stuff that does. My goal is really to maintain our current programming and staffing. I think that that's a definitely doable proposition. So I'm not suggesting any new radical things. I am suggesting to restore the 1.0 full-time music teacher that we didn't restore in the spring because we were trying to wait for the other shoe to drop to see what could possibly happen. What we have seen happen in the governor's first draft budget is that things could be better for sure, but they also could be a lot worse. And so it's not as dire as we first thought it might be. Another priority is to replace, so last board meeting, we abolished that director of athletics and instruction position. And so what we plan to replace that with is some sort of assistant principal middle school coordinator position to really take over, to work with the curriculum and to work on instruction at the middle school level, and also to assist in some other things so that the two building principals can do more with curriculum in their buildings. We also want to establish a STEM lab in the elementary school to be used as kind of a swing room for science labs and elective classes. And so there's some work that needs to be done in there, but it's not a large project. And then the other thing that we'd really like to do is to begin to modernize our classrooms for distance instruction. So even though we want to return to normal, we would be wrong if we thought that this kind of thing is never going to happen again. And so this year, we really are on a, our classrooms have kind of been duct taped together so that we can provide our program. If you noticed on that video, one of the things that I like the best is those cool carts that teachers have their computers on. Those are carts that used to hold lots of Chromebooks, and Anand and his team actually made those countertops that are on top of them. And then also the cameras that the teachers are using, that was also a last minute purchase before school started, to try to avoid using the cameras that are on the laptops. If we had gone without those two things, we'd really be sunk now. But we need to build rooms that are flexible enough to do distance learning on the fly, because we know that it's never going to 100% go away. And we want that kind of flexibility to do different things to teach kids, whether they're in school or not. And so there's some things that we can do to modernize our classrooms. And then also, we'd like to continue one-to-one computing. So that's something that we had to do in order to run, but it's an excellent resource for kids, and we'd like to continue doing it. In order to do that, we need to have a reasonable replacement cycle for those Chromebooks. Many of the Chromebooks that are out in people's homes right now are fairly old and are in need of being replaced. There's also an awful lot of challenges that this budget has. One is that preventive equipment, PPE, costs lots of money. And so that's something that has been a challenge to us. Transportation has been about twice as expensive. We're doing twice as many runs. It's about twice as expensive as it usually is. We know that there's been a great economic impact to New York State. New York State's in a hole. And so they're going to look toward the biggest portion of their budget, education, to get out of that hole. We also know that there's been a huge social and emotional impact to students and staff. So things like counseling services, social work, those are things that with the trauma that kids have experienced over the last year and a half, we really need to protect as we go forward. Even though it's something that's not a mandated thing, it's something that's definitely going to be needed as we reintegrate kids into full-time in-person learning. Also, we know that there are gaps caused by remote learning. So it's interesting when you think about gaps in education. So gaps are only there if we say they are. If we realize that every school around us also has had to deal with the same things, then there are no gaps anymore. The other thing that we have to worry about is whether or not the state test makers have recognized that there needs to be a realignment to compensate for this year and a half period. So those gaps are gaps of our own making. And then also there's an ongoing concern regarding the future and what's going to happen next and what the next possible crisis could be, and making sure that we're ready for it, that we're prepared. Now, I've talked about this with Jeff several times, that I can recall during H1N1, the swine flu, I can recall after that doing planning for pandemics and how we could go remote as a district, the district that I was in at the time. And so I really took that activity very seriously at the time. And so I don't know that everybody took it as seriously, and now you can bet that everybody will be. But we have to make sure that we're prepared for this kind of thing, because we're likely going to see maybe not this exact thing, but something like it again, and we need to be ready for it. Okay, and so Jeff is going to present a little bit about the three main categories of revenue that we have. So the three main categories that we're talking about are reserves and fund balance. So this is our piggy bank. However, it's a piggy bank only in that it holds money. Some of this money we have to use for specific purposes. There are limits on how we can access some of the money, and some of it's very specific in the way that we can use it. Then about 50-50 are our tax levy and our state aid. So we know that in terms of imposing taxes on the public, we know that one, there's very little appetite in the public for raising taxes really high. We know that there's a cap on tax levies. And we also know that as a district, it's our responsibility to make sure that any raise in tax levy that we do is done gradually, so it doesn't impact people who are also hurting in the midst of this crisis. And then the final category is state aid. And so we have things like foundation aid, which represents the biggest portion of our aid. We have a new category that we'll talk about called services aid that hopefully goes away soon. And we have building aid. And we also have some other new revenue categories that we're going to mention. One being COVID relief and one being STAR, which hasn't always been in this state aid pot.
So something to mention also about the revenue categories is there's one category in this slide right now in our three major revenues that we don't really have complete control over, and that's the state aid. So you have the tax levy and state aid that make up about 47% each of our revenue part of the budget, and then we have to make up the rest with either fund balance, reserves, or possibly other revenues. So here's a look at just a visual of the actual 20 to 21 budget. This is what our revenues actually look like. So you can see we're kind of close to 47% on both of those categories, the state aid and the real property taxes. And then the rest of our revenues are made up of either fund balance, reserves, other Medicaid things, or other sources. So a majority is just made up of taxes and state aid. So we have to kind of keep balancing those out as we increase our actual expenditure budget. And then we're going to close the gaps with fund balance or reserves. So if you remember the 20 to 21 school year budget, we actually did say that we were going to put additional money into the budget from a reserve from the ERS reserves. So for the first time in many years, we actually appropriated $100,000 for the budget. So there is that possibility that we could need it at the end of the year or not, but that will be like one of the last resources that we would use to balance our budget at the end of the year if we get close to spending our entire budget. So this is just a look at our reserves right now. This is the status from June 30th, 2020. And you can see we haven't used that much from the prior year. A majority of our reserves, again, are in our capital reserve fund. So the past couple of years, additional fund balance from the end of the year budget, we've been using it to put into the capital reserve so that we can save up for the next capital project. This will be helpful because the community will not have to pay extra on interest on that borrowed amount that goes into the reserve for capital. And that capital fund right now has a cap at $6 million. So we can fill that reserve up to $6 million and put it towards the next capital project. This is a look at overall our state aid over the past several years. And you can see that the trend has been, it's been pretty gentle over the past several years, except for in 2018 or 2017-18 year to the 2018-19 school year. You can see there was an overall jump, and that was because of the fact that our our building aid was added into our reserve, our state aid, to pay for some of the interest payments on our capital projects. So that's when our debt started to go into play in the 2018-19 school year, when we really had to start paying for that capital project that we had just completed in 2017-18. And this is a look at what we got from the governor's budget run just very recently. And for the purpose of trying to show you what we know about the state aid outlook right now, we actually removed the visual in this chart showing the additional STAR that in the governor's runs, he actually showed the amount that we get back for our STAR payments, which is a portion of our tax levy. So when we tax the community, we throw out a total budget of $8,100,000, and a portion of that $8,100,000 would actually come from STAR. So approximately about $800,000 of that tax levy actually comes from our STAR rebate that we get back from the state. So for some reason, they have decided to actually show that in our state aid outlook this year. And it really didn't help the visual matter of trying to figure out how much money we were actually getting from state aid this year. So you can see by the time it all gets added in and taken out and then added back in again, we get about, it's very equivalent to what we got for the 2021 school year. So that's provided, of course, that we actually receive that additional 20% that they've been holding back and that they've been keeping from us. Hopefully we'll get all that. But then for the 21-22 school year, it looks like we're going to kind of stay flat on our revenue sources from the state. So they've also added this additional Federal CARES Act to adjust the they're actually taking out like $619,000 for the 21-22 school year, and it's something that we saw very similar with the federal CARES money. So they had taken out in the 2021, the current year, they had taken out $116,000 and then put it back in with federal money. Then next year they decided that they were going to get rid of that federal CARES restoration, and they're going to call it COVID-19 stimulus. So amongst all that, they've also decided to consolidate our expense-based aids. So that would be software, library, BOCES, transportation. There's 6 other categories, but those the BOCES and the transportation are the big ones for us. So when we receive back BOCES and transportation aid and software aid and library aid, it's all based on prior year expenses. So for BOCES, for instance, if we spend $1.4 million, we might expect to get back close to around $600,000 in our BOCES aid. But now they don't want to show that in this category that they've created for services aid. So it's kind of concerning that if we don't have these expense-based aids coming back in our state aid outlooks, what exactly is the purpose of using services like BOCES? BOCES is a great service. It saves us a lot of money. So hopefully it will continue to be an expense-based aid, and hopefully eventually they will break this back out and show us what our aid resources actually are.
So just kind of like from a layperson's point of view, the things that jump out are that our foundation is flat, which is better than the alternative of it being decreased, but our expenses continue to increase. So our expenses increase, our foundation aid is flat. The services aid is particularly problematic because it prevents us from being able to predict future expenses based on what we've spent in the past. If we don't have the ability to predict, then it's really, really difficult to plan. And then also you could just take money away from it and we are not really sure where you're taking the money from. And then the other bit with the COVID stimulus. So while we did get $619,000 in COVID stimulus money, the governor is actually subtracting an equal portion of that from our budget. So what happens in 22-23, if there's no more COVID stimulus, that creates a hole at least $619,000 big in the 22-23 budget that either needs to be filled with additional stimulus from the federal government, additional state aid, which we know probably isn't likely to happen, or it is some sort of a cut that we have to find. And so those are things that I really, that are top of mind to me. Flat foundation, potential cliff for caused by that stimulus funding.
So this is a look at what our tax levy history has been for the past few years. You can see for the 2019-20 school year, we kept a tax levy at a 0% increase. So we continued to just go out with the $8,072,101. Then for the 2021 school year, we increased the tax levy at only 1.9%, and that was even though we had a lot of unknowns with the state's government. We had a tax cap that was much higher than that. It was closer to 5%. So we went out responsibly with our tax levy and went out with that 1.9. And again, for the 21-22 school year, right now, the estimated calculation looks like it's going to be around 4.4% tax cap. So technically, if we needed to take a full tax levy of the 4.4%, we could actually do that. However, it's not likely that we're going to try and go near that tax cap. We would like to go out responsibly with the community and hopefully balance our budget, hopefully with even some fund balance that might have come back from last year's budget. So the 19-20 school year budget, again, because of the fact that we had operations that were not running, and we had a lot of energy savings, and there were some transportation savings, but we weren't running lights, we weren't running furnaces, air conditioners, etc. There's going to be some additional fund balance that may actually go into the revenue side of the budget this year. It's going to look a little bit different than what we've done in the past. And then a graphic here on the left-hand side, just showing what a house assessed at $100,000 would look like for a tax levy increase. So you can see if we were to increase our tax levy by 1%, this is what the average household that has an assessed value of $100,000 would actually see. It's about $19.83. So it's not a huge cost. However, when we start getting homes that are assessed a little bit higher, of course, you're going to see that continue to multiply. But that's what a 1% would look like. And this is an overall look at the historical of our tax levy. We've consistently stayed lower than the tax cap, and it's been pretty gradual. And then you can see for the 2020-2021 school year budget, the tax cap was quite a bit higher than what we actually went out with. So we could have increased it, but we kept it low. There were a couple years when we were close to the cap, but we did not exceed it. So we will continue to ask the community to not have to exceed the actual tax cap. And this is just an overall look at our two largest sources of revenue compared to our actual expenditures. So on the bottom here, we have the tax levy in blue and the state aid in green, with our actual expenditures coming out in the orange, on the orange line on the top. So for the years when the actual expenditure line is lower than the top of the tax levy and state aid bar, that's when the years we did see some fund balance generated. So those were the years actually that we took fund balance, like the 18-19 school year. That was a year when we utilized some of our fund balance and put it towards our reserve, our capital reserve fund. And then for the 19-20 school year budget, because there were so many unknowns, we ended up keeping that as just fund balance in the bank to save up for the possibilities of the 20% cuts in state aid, and then the potentials for the 21-22 school year, and also seeing the potential that there could be some aid cuts as well. And because there were so many aid cuts, it was pretty much across the board. Talking to other school districts, they were doing the same thing, where they were taking that fund balance at the end of that year and saving it up for a rainy day. All right, so this is a look, a visual from. Oh, wait a minute. What happened? This is a look at overall school districts that are similar in size to the Waynesburg School District. And you can see we're kind of right in the middle of many of the districts locally here that have a similar size or similar budgets with Dwaynesburg. So our tax rates per student balanced out between all the other districts. We're kind of right in the middle of the road. So we're not on the bottom, but we're definitely not on the top. Recently, just like last year in January, the Office of State Comptroller offers their fiscal monitoring stress level publications, and again, we've done well at getting the no designation category. So we've stayed consistent with our revenues and support revenues to support expenditures. So that's some of the things that we can actually control on the fiscal end and the revenue. So anything with year-end fund balances, operating deficits and surpluses, cash position, and use of short-term debt. Those are all things that we can work together to kind of control in our budgets. And we've stayed consistent with getting that no designation. The next one is the environmental look, which are a lot of the things that we cannot control, and that has to do with economically disadvantaged, teacher turnover rates, property values, and one of the things that I guess is environmental that maybe we'd like to try and control is the budget pass rates. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. So on the road ahead, it looks like the New York State budget is going to affect a lot of our final decisions. There's a lot of unknowns still. The governor's projections said that his aid amounts were based on a $6 million loss, when in reality there could be $6 billion loss instead of a $15 billion loss, which has the potential to really hurt our state aid revenues. So these state aid sources are continuing to be threatened by the state. We don't really know what is going to happen with this 20%. Are we going to actually see those checks by the end of March? I'll believe it again, like I've said, I'll believe it when the actual check has been received. So our health insurance rates also have potential to be higher than usual this year. There's a lot of factors that go into changing health insurance rates. Of course, because health insurance has something to do with COVID, of course, we could see those rates increase a little bit more than we've seen in the past. Fortunately for our health insurance trust, we've done pretty well with our rates over the past several years. We've stayed at either 5% or below. So it is possible that we could see a 5% rate, but it's also possible that we could see closer to maybe even 7 or 8% as well. So going to be looking with our health insurance trust there, and hopefully getting our costs to be settled at a decent rate. But they're still actually working with Empire right now. Some things that we kind of expect for our budget, and we'll be talking a little bit about that, is contractual, and at our next budget work session will be contractual and supply services and purchases. We can probably assume that those things are going to be much higher this year. And it's just because in general, the New York State economy, or any economy, the economy in the whole nation is it's difficult. So anything that comes out of contractual or supply, which are a large portion of our budget expenditures, is going to be going up. We have to use our rainy day funds probably for the 21-22 school year budget. So for the next 3 years, we can assume that we will be using fund balance, or we may be using reserves. We may be digging our hands into our pockets a little bit more than we've seen in the past. However, our district has done very well at staying fiscally responsible, and we have put away for our rainy days, but we have to assume that we're going to be using that for the next few years to just trying to balance out the budget and hopefully not cut programs so that we can provide the best for kids. The district, we're going to continue to strategize in order to uphold the education that we provide. We're going to aim to not have to lay off teachers, not have to cut programs. In fact, the goals that Dr. Niedermeyer has presented will expand the opportunities for kids, and we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we do so. So we're going to continue to monitor the state aid runs on the governor's initial budget numbers. It could have been worse. We could have seen a projection from the governor that was a lot worse. We've seen years where the governor has put out horrible numbers, lower than what we expected. This year it was actually higher than what was expected because he actually went flat on the governor's run or on the budget runs. Quite honestly, I expected it to be at least 5 to 10% lower than what he actually presented. So just keeping our fingers crossed that we can at least see that 0% or maybe even an increase by the time the legislator gets to the table. Some budget strategies that we're going to see for the 21-22 school year budget. We're going to try and present with selecting a responsible tax levy for the community. We want everybody to be happy with our tax levy. We're going to evaluate the economy, including the state budget. So this is going to be something that we're going to constantly monitor and see what they're actually going to present us with. We're also going to consider using additional fund balance than what we've used in the past to offset possible budget gaps. Again, we don't want to make any cuts to programs, teachers, programs for kids. So we're going to continue using, consider existing financial conditions of the budget or of the district. And we've done really well. We've got reserves. We've got a little over $5 million in reserves. Of course, some of that is going to be for our next capital project. And we would like to keep it that way so that we don't have to dip into that pocket. But if the case comes out that we really got to start digging, then we do have it. Right now, there's not really a concern that for our district that we'll be in trouble at this point. It might be a little difficult at times, but we should be able to get through the next 3 to 5 years.
I just wanted to share with you too. So when Jeff is talking about going out at a responsible tax levy, really we haven't gone out at a tax levy above 2, and there have been years when we've gone out at 0. And so even in those years that we've gone out at 0, we've had about a 66-65% budget passing rate. And so there's not an appetite in the community for raising the funds that we're going to need through tax levy. And so I think that this year is particularly challenging to do some outreach to the community because it's not as easy to get out to places to meet people and to present to them in person. And so we're going to look for some other opportunities to meet people where they are and try to do some different things online so that we can get people to vote on this budget and support our schools at a time when we really need them to do that. And then back to our important dates. And so these are the dates that I talked about at the beginning. And so we'll continue to chip away at this budget a little piece at a time until we have the whole thing put together. And hopefully by around March and April, we have a better sense of what the state run is. Just one closing thought is if anybody watched the governor's State of the State address, which took 4 days, days straight, it was on 4 separate days. But he did really, when he presented his executive budget, he really presented 2 budgets. One that's based on an assumption of a $6 billion additional stimulus from the federal government, and one that's based on a $15 billion additional stimulus package from the government. The aid run that we got was the lower of those two, was the $6 billion estimation, which was the floor. And so we hope that over time, this budget becomes more favorable, even though when it came out this first time, there was a lot in it that leaved us wanting a little bit. So does anybody have any questions about any of the stuff that we've presented? Anything that we can clarify? Okay.
Thank you very much for that presentation and for breaking things down. Jeff has a pretty good knack for breaking some things down and talking to us about numbers in a practical way. So thank you. I appreciate that. We're going to move on to through the agenda then. Next, we have our presentation approval of the prior Board of Education meeting minutes. We have a recommendation the Board of Education accept the meeting minutes for the January 12th, 2020 1 meeting as submitted. Do I have a motion on that?
I'll motion.
Diane, thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Deb. Any corrections, comments, additions, deletions to our meeting minutes for the January 12th meeting? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on to the new business and standing committee reports. We just had a meeting 2 weeks ago, so I'm not sure any committees met in between. Basically, last week it would have been. Am I missing any committee meetings that took place? I know the policy committee continues to work on a regular basis with finishing up our policy review, and then I know the buildings and grounds has a lot going on right now too, but I don't think they have an update this time. Okay. All right, we'll move on to financial items. First, we have accepting the ECA report. Recommendations, the Board of Education accept the appropriation status, the budget transfer revenue status ECA report ending December 31st, 2020, as provided by the treasurer and recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Teresa, thanks. And how about a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Shane. Any questions or comments on those reports? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. The next item is accepting the claims auditor's report. Recommendation, the Board of Education accept the claims auditor's comments on general warrant A12 dated January 5th, 2021. Do we have any questions or comments on general warrant A12? Oh, I'm sorry, I did that backwards. Do we have a motion first?
I'll motion.
Thanks, Teresa. And second?
That was Deb.
Oh, that was Deb, sorry.
I can second though. I'll second.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Celeste, if I screwed you up. Okay, now do we have any questions or comments on A12? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on down our agenda. Next, we have the approving the memorandum of agreement between the district and the Duanesburg Administrators Association. Resolved that the Board of Education hereby approve the memorandum of agreement by and between the district and the Duanesburg Administrators Association, setting forth the terms and conditions of a successor collective bargaining agreement for a term beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending on June 30th, 2024. Approves payment thereunder and authorizes the superintendent to execute said agreement. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Diane, thanks. And a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Tony. Any questions or comments on the memorandum of agreement? No. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on to other items, section of the agenda. Approving the CSE minutes. Recommendation, the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the CSE meetings and their minutes from January 5th, 7th, 11th, 14th, and 15th of 2021 meetings. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thanks, Shane. How about a second?
I'll second.
Betsy, thanks. Any questions or comments on the CSE minutes? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on to personnel matters. Approve maternity leave of absence. Recommendation, the Board of Education approve the maternity leave of absence as requested by Jillian Pagliavento, effective February 26th through June 30th, 2020, as recommended by the superintendent. Do we have a motion?
2021.
Oh, did I read that wrong? June 30th, 2021.
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Diane. And a second?
I can second.
Teresa, thanks. Any questions or comments on the extended leave? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on down our agenda, next we have approved coaching appointments. Recommendation, the Board of Education approve the following appointments as recommended by the superintendent and athletic director. ECA appointments are for the applicable 2020 to 2021 school year and the sports season, beginning with preseason practice and ending at the conclusion of the season, including sectional play. All appointments are employees at will, and the appointment at this time does not guarantee employment for the entire school season, term, or year. The salary for ECA clubs, activities, and athletic positions will be prorated based on the length of the season, term, or year. The operation of certain clubs and activities are subject to COVID-19 related restriction. Now we have three appointments this evening for varsity football coach, modified football coach, and an assistant varsity football coach. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thanks, Tony. And how about a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Shane. Any questions or comments on the appointments of those coaches? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next, we have a discussion item, the 2021 to 2022 school year calendar. I think everyone has a copy of it to look at. Did anyone have any questions at this point about what that's going to be? Of course, we know subject to change, depending on what's going on in the world around us. No?
Okay. I can just point out one thing that's different is that in the Regents Week, the second Regents Week in June, Juneteenth observed is an optional holiday. However, I will say that I think all the other schools in our region are observing that, and we'd like to continue to do that. Although it does make it really difficult to get to 184 days. And the other thing that I point out too is that because of that, we had to also add that prior to Labor Day conference day, which I know is not popular with teachers, and I apologize.
So I thought I had read somewhere that Juneteenth was going to be a state holiday.
Yeah, it is. It's a state holiday. However, it is optional whether people are going to take it. I don't know always, but at least next year, because it's an observed. So June 20th is the holiday next year. So I think that state ed gave us the option to take that and observe it or not. There won't be any exams that day, whether we do or not. It is a new thing, though, to put a holiday in the middle of Regents Week.
Yeah, well, that's when it happened. So.
That's right.
Question.
Yeah, Diane, go ahead.
It's not a big deal. It's just I'm curious. In years past, there was, I believe it was a Superintendent's Day, unless I'm reading it. Nope. On the day after October, the holiday in October, Columbus Day.
The day after Columbus Day?
It was either the day after or on the 8th. I remember it was an extended weekend, but I feel like it was the day after Columbus Day. Last year, I think, and the year before, and the year before.
There's an early release day on the 8th, which is before Columbus Day, but I think that that's the same as this year too.
Okay, I don't remember a conference day, but the early release date, is that because of drills or something?
Yeah, that's right. So
required.
It's a regional kind of early release day.
I don't know why. The only reason I think that is because I used to go on vacation, and on that week it was like we only took 3 days out of school instead of the 4 for some reason. You guys are looking at me, Jody and Andrea. You guys are looking at me like I'm crazy. Am I crazy? Did we not have a day there or something? Okay.
Well, no one else remembers that, Diane. I
just think about my fabulous vacations, and that is one thing I remember is not having to take the whole week. Just saying. Okay. My bad.
I think you've been not going on vacation so long now due to the pandemic that you're having very very enhanced memories of previous vacations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay, so that's the school calendar as we know it right now, of course, subject to change. All right, next, we are looking to move into executive session in order to discuss the employment history of a particular employee. And I will state now that once we are finished with the executive session, we will be adjourning the regular meeting. We come back out of exec session. We will not be conducting any further business, and we will just end the meeting with a motion. So, do I have a motion to enter into executive session in order to discuss the employment history of a particular employee?
I'll make a motion.
Whoa, that was like 3 people. Select whoever you heard for motion, and how about a second?
I'll second.
Thanks,
Diane. You heard me twice. I don't know.
I heard Diane first the first time.
Oh yeah.
I'll take